Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is November 11th. On this day in 1969, 20-year-old Joyce Malecki left her southwest Baltimore home to do some early Christmas shopping and never came back. Her body was discovered by hunters on the grounds of Fort Meade, a U.S. Army installation halfway between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. An autopsy showed that Joyce had been strangled. Now, more than half a century later, her case remains unsolved. But recent developments have given her family a reason to hope that time and science might still reveal the truth. Today, we're talking about the unsolved murder of Joyce Malecki. Let's get started. November 11th, 1969 was Veterans Day. Joyce Malecki was 20 years old. She was bright, close to her family, and worked at the credit department of a local business. That evening, she told her family that she planned to go to Harundale Mall in Glen Burnie, about 10 miles from her home in southwest Baltimore. She wanted to get an early start on her Christmas shopping. After that, she was going to go meet her new boyfriend, James Galt, for a date. When she didn't return that night, her family wasn't immediately alarmed. They thought that maybe she'd stayed with a female friend. But when she didn't return in the morning, Joyce's family knew that something wasn't right, and they reported her missing. In the days that followed, investigators began piecing together Joyce's final plans. Joyce's brother and investigators, of course, reached out to her boyfriend, who was a soldier stationed at Fort Meade, because remember, they were supposed to meet that night after her shopping trip. But according to him, Joyce called him from a payphone around 9:45 p.m. and said that she was on her way. But she never arrived. Galt said that he waited for her until midnight before returning to his barracks. Now listen, I know what you're thinking, but in later years, Joyce's brother Daryl Malecki told reporters that investigators had ruled out her boyfriend early on in the investigation. Unfortunately, there's just not much else we know about the night she was last seen. We don't know what route she took, who she may have encountered, or when exactly she vanished. It all just remains unknown. 2 days after that shopping trip, on November 13th, 1969, two deer hunters were walking through a wooded area near Fort Meade's training grounds when they came upon a terrible sight. A young woman's body was lying in a shallow stream. Because her body was found on federal property, the case immediately fell under FBI jurisdiction with assistance from military police and local authorities. The autopsy confirmed that strangulation had been the cause of death, but that wasn't all. Joyce had also been stabbed, bludgeoned, and sexually assaulted. While Joan's body being found at Fort Meade obviously points toward the boyfriend, investigators determined that it wasn't the site of the murder. Instead, Joyce's body had just been dumped there over a fence and had rolled down into the stream. When her car was discovered outside of the Vegas Club in Odenton, Maryland, with the keys still inside and her shopping bags on the passenger seat, there was also human blood found in the back seat. After Joyce's body was discovered, FBI agents canvassed the mall and surrounding businesses. They interviewed friends, coworkers, and family members and questioned anyone who might have seen Joyce's car. But it was 1969. We were decades away from DNA databases or cell phone records, even CCTV. So clues were few and far between. Months passed and no suspect emerged. The file remained open, but the case eventually went cold. Every few years, a new investigator would open it up and take a look, but there just wasn't a lot of movement. For Joyce's family, it was of course devastating. They were left with nothing but unanswered questions. They knew where she went and where she was found, but not what happened in between, and certainly not who was responsible. But Joyce's murder quickly became part of a larger conversation in Baltimore. Just 4 days before her disappearance, on November 7th, 1969, Sister Catherine Kathy Sesnick, a 26-year-old nun and teacher, had vanished after a shopping trip of her own. When her body was found in January 1970, also strangled, people immediately began asking whether the two cases could be connected. Both young women were last seen near shopping centers. Both were taken within the same week, and both crimes shocked the community. But despite decades of speculation, revived most notably by Netflix's The Keepers in 2017, no official evidence has ever linked the two cases. That same year, investigators exhumed the body of Father Joseph Maskell, a priest named in The Keepers, to compare his DNA against evidence from the Sesnick case. The results ruled him out. For Joyce's case, the FBI has never publicly named a suspect. But Joyce also wasn't the only woman connected to Harundale Mall whose case haunted investigators. In 1970, 16-year-old Pamela Conyers vanished after attending an event at the same mall. She, too, was later found strangled. For decades, her murder remained unsolved, until 2023, when investigators used modern DNA analysis to identify her killer as Forrest Clyde Williams III, who died in 2018. While this may have briefly offered some hope in Joyce's case, authorities were quick to clarify. There's no known link between Pamela Conyers' murder and Joyce Malecki's. But that case showed what science could do now that it couldn't do in 1969. In December 2023, for the first time in over half a century, Joyce's case took a visible step forward. The FBI exhumed her remains from Loudon Park Cemetery in Baltimore. Officials didn't share specifics, but reporting from multiple outlets confirmed that the goal was likely to collect DNA for modern comparison and analysis. For Joyce's brother Daryl, it was a bittersweet moment. No one wants to have a loved one's remains dug up, but it did mean that after all these years, investigators were still working, still testing, and still looking for answers. Joyce Malecki's story has stretched across generations, from black and white headlines to digital databases. But at its center is a family who has waited more than 50 years for answers and for justice. The facts of her last day have never changed. There was a shopping trip and a discovery that shattered a family. But what may change with science, persistence, and time is the ability to finally name the person responsible. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found Joyce's story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day, True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!